The ultimate takedown. Blue suit, red dress, and the epic karma. What happens when a man brings his secret mistress to the most exclusive event of the year, unaware that his perfect wife already knows, and has a meticulously crafted plan for public humiliation? This is the story of Sinclair, a ruthless executive, his perfect wife Mayara, and his young mistress Mel. Tonight on a glamorous Miami mega yacht, Mel believes her dream is coming true, but this night of luxury is about to become the worst humiliation of her life, courtesy of the woman they both underestimated. Stay until the end, because this vengeance was truly epic. The cold marble and the blue suit. The sound of keys dropping onto the marble table echoed in the silence of the luxury apartment in Miami's Brickell area. Mayara looked up from her laptop, where she was reviewing the financial statements of her consulting firm, and watched Sinclair shuffle in, his tie loosened and hair disheveled. "Late again?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. She no longer had the energy for arguments. Sinclair didn't even look at her. He headed straight to the bar and poured himself a double whiskey. "Had a meeting that ran late. The foreign investors are very demanding." Mayara closed the laptop with more force than necessary. They had been married for 12 years, and for the past 3, meetings that ran late had become her husband's favorite excuse. She wasn't foolish. She had built her own company from scratch and knew a lie when she heard one. "Sinclair, we need to talk about tomorrow's event," she said, standing up from the dining table. "The charity foundation is counting on our presence. It's important for my professional reputation." He took a long swig of whiskey before answering. Sure, I'll be ready." But his distant tone and the way he avoided her gaze told her everything she needed to know. Sinclair was physically present, but emotionally he had disappeared long ago. Mayara retreated to her home office, a space she had carefully designed with sleek, modern furniture. It was her sanctuary, the place where she could be herself without pretense. She sat in front of her vanity mirror and studied her reflection. At 35, she was still a beautiful woman, with delicate features framed by blonde hair. Her blue eyes, which once sparkled with happiness when Sinclair looked at her, now reflected a deep sadness that makeup couldn't hide. She remembered the early years of their marriage, when Sinclair worked as a junior architect and she was just starting her company. They lived in a small apartment, but they were happy. He supported her unconditionally, celebrated every new client, every major contract she signed. Everything changed when Sinclair was promoted to partner at the most prestigious architecture firm in New York. Professional success brought a luxury apartment, imported cars, and a completely different social circle, but it also brought distance, coldness, and secrets. Sinclair's phone rang in the living room, interrupting her thoughts. She heard his voice, now animated and warm, very different from the flat tone he had used with her. "No, my love, I can't see you tonight." "Yes, I know. I miss you too. Tomorrow after the event, I promise." Mayara closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The words hit her like punches to the stomach, but they no longer surprised her. She had suspected for months, had seen the signs, the whispered calls, the lack of intimacy, the way he avoided her when they were alone. "Mayara," Sinclair's voice sounded from the doorway. She didn't turn around. "What do you need?" "Just wanted to say you look good in that suit." She finally turned to look at him. Sinclair was leaning against the doorframe, whiskey glass in hand, and an expression that seemed genuinely regretful. For a moment, she saw glimpses of the man she had fallen in love with, tall, with sharp features, dark eyes that once looked at her as if she were the only thing that mattered in the world. "Thank you," she replied simply. "Mayara, he began, but stopped, as if the words were stuck in his throat. "Yes?" Sinclair shook his head and took another drink. "Nothing. Sleep well." He left, leaving her alone with her thoughts, and the echo of his phone conversation still ringing in her ears. That night, Mayara couldn't sleep. She stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Sinclair's regular breathing beside her. She wondered when she had stopped fighting for her marriage, when she had accepted that things just were the way they were. She wondered who the other woman was, if she was younger, more beautiful, if she gave Sinclair something she no longer could. But most of all, she wondered who she had become in this marriage. The successful, confident woman who had built a prosperous company seemed to disappear within these walls, replaced by someone who accepted crumbs of attention and pretended not to hear her husband's whispered phone calls. At dawn, she made a decision. She didn't know exactly what she would do, but she knew something had to change. She couldn't keep living in this diluted version of what was once a happy marriage. As he woke up, she was already dressed for the office, a cup of coffee in hand, and a determined expression. "I'll see you at the event tonight," she told him without waiting for an answer. Sinclair nodded, still half asleep. "Sure, I'll be there." Mayara headed for the door, but stopped and turned back to him. "Sinclair, I just want you to know that I'm not the same woman I was 3 years ago. I no longer accept just anything to keep the peace." And she left, leaving him with those words, and the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between them. Tier 2. The red dress and the glass castle. Mel looked at herself for the third time in the full-length mirror of her apartment in Brooklyn. The blood-red dress she had bought specifically for tonight fit her 26-year-old body perfectly. It was a daring design, with a plunging neckline and a side slit that showed off her toned leg. She had spent 3 months' salary on that piece, but it was worth it if it achieved the effect she was looking for. Her phone vibrated with a message from Sinclair. "Can't see you before the event, but I promise tonight will be special. I love you." Mel smiled, putting the phone away in her clutch bag. She had been Sinclair's mistress for 8 months, and every day she fell more deeply in love with him. At first, it had just been an exciting fling. He was older, successful, and offered her a world of luxury she had never known. But now her feelings were real, intense, and the thought of sharing him with his wife consumed her. She had met him at an architecture conference, where she worked as an event coordinator for a catering company. Sinclair had arrived alone, claiming his wife was too busy with her business things to accompany him. Mel had been captivated by his presence, his charming smile, and the way he made her feel like the only woman in the room. "You're beautiful," he had told her that first night over dinner at one of the most exclusive restaurants. "My wife doesn't look at me the way you look at me anymore." And that's where it all began. Secret dinners, meetings in discreet hotels, expensive gifts she had to hide from her friends and family. Sinclair had told her his marriage was just a facade, that he and Mayara lived like strangers under the same roof, that they only stayed together for social appearances. "She's more interested in her company than in me," Sinclair would tell her during their intimate meetings. "With you, I feel alive again, my love. With you, I am the man I truly want to be." Mel had convinced herself that she was saving Sinclair from a loveless marriage. She had convinced herself that she deserved his happiness, that she deserved to have him completely to herself. And tonight, at the gala event, she would finally be in his world. She would meet his friends, be seen by his side, even if only as a business associate's guest. Her best friend, Carly, had warned her several times about the dangers of getting involved with a married man. "Mel, honey, men always say they're going to leave their wives, but how many actually do?" Carly had sighed, shaking her head with a worried expression. "He's been saying that for months, Mel. If he really wanted to be with you, he would have made the decision already." But Mel didn't want to hear those words. She was convinced that Sinclair just needed time, that he would eventually choose true love over social conventions. The taxi arrived, and Mel got in, checking her appearance one last time in the window. She was nervous, but excited. Tonight would mark the beginning of her real life with Sinclair. She was sure of it. As the taxi headed toward downtown Miami, Mel couldn't imagine that in a few hours her world would crumble in the most humiliating way possible. She couldn't imagine that the woman she had underestimated for months was about to teach her a lesson she would never forget. In another part of the city, Mayara prepared for the event with a calm she hadn't felt in years. She wore the navy blue suit jacket, had styled her hair in an elegant but understated bun, and chosen discreet but expensive jewelry. She looked professional, sophisticated, and completely in control. But inside, she had made a decision that would change everything. That morning, after leaving home, she hadn't gone straight to her office. Instead, she had visited a private investigator whom a business friend had discreetly recommended months ago. "I need to know the truth," she had told the serious-looking older man who met her in a discreet downtown office. "I need proof." The detective had handed her a thick manila envelope. "Everything is here, ma'am. Photos, hotel records, phone logs." "I'm sorry." Mayara had paid. She had taken the envelope and returned to her office. But she hadn't opened it. She didn't need to see the photos to know her marriage was over. What she needed was to decide how she was going to handle it. And now, as she put on the diamond earrings Sinclair had given her for their 10th anniversary, she knew exactly what she was going to do. Tonight, in front of all the Miami society they knew, she was going to reclaim her dignity. 3. The public stage and the secret kiss. The Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach gleamed with golden lights as Mayara and Sinclair arrived in their black Mercedes-Benz. Society photographers were already positioned at the entrance, capturing the most prominent couples as they arrived at the most important charity event of the year. Mayara stepped out of the car with grace, adjusting her navy blue jacket and smiling professionally at the cameras. Her presence radiated confidence and sophistication, every gesture calculated to project success and elegance. Sinclair, dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looked imposing beside her, but Mayara could sense his eyes constantly scanning the crowd, searching for something or someone. "Smile, darling," she murmured as they posed for photos. "Remember, we're the perfect couple." The slightly sarcastic tone did not go unnoticed by Sinclair, who looked at her curiously but didn't have time to respond before they were approached by acquaintances and business partners. "Mayara, you look spectacular," exclaimed Elaine Baker, one of the event organizers and the wife of a major financial sector executive. "That suit is divine. Is it a local designer?" "Of course," Mayara replied with a genuine smile. "I always try to support national talent. How are the donations going tonight?" While Mayara immersed herself in conversations about the foundation and charitable projects, Sinclair excused himself to go to the bar. His eyes continued to scan the crowd, and his anxious behavior did not escape his wife's notice. On the other side of the ballroom, Mel had arrived 15 minutes after them. Her entrance had been less noticeable, but equally impactful to those who observed her. The red dress she had chosen was dazzling under the chandelier lights, and her youth and natural beauty caught the attention of several men present. She had strategically positioned herself near the bar, from where she could observe Sinclair without being obvious. Her heart raced when she saw him, as elegant and attractive as ever. But when her eyes landed on Mayara, she felt a mixture of curiosity and jealousy that surprised her. Sinclair's wife was not what she had expected. The few photos she had seen on social media did not do her justice. Mayara was genuinely beautiful, with a natural elegance that didn't need to flaunt. She wore the blue suit with a confidence that only comes from years of professional success, and her presence commanded instant respect. "She's not what I imagined," Mel muttered to herself, feeling a small pang of insecurity for the first time. Carly, who had managed to get an invitation through her PR job, approached Mel with a glass of champagne. "Well, there's your Prince Charming," she said, discreetly gesturing towards Sinclair. "And I suppose that elegant lady in the blue suit is the wife who supposedly makes him so unhappy." Mel followed her friend's gaze and watched Mayara interact with the other guests. It was evident that she was respected and admired in that social circle. Several prominent businessmen approached to greet her personally, and she handled every conversation with professionalism and genuine warmth. "She looks different from what I had imagined," Mel reluctantly admitted. "Different how? More beautiful? More successful? More sophisticated?" Carly asked ironically. "Mel, that woman doesn't look like someone who has neglected her husband. She looks like someone who could buy her husband if she wanted to." Mel didn't respond, but her friend's words unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Meanwhile, Sinclair had managed to position himself at the bar and discreetly sent Mel a message. "You look incredible. Meet me in the garden in 10 minutes." A few minutes later, both headed toward the hotel gardens, where soft lights and ambient music created an intimate atmosphere out from the main ballroom crowd. "Mel, my love, you're radiant," Sinclair murmured, taking her hand and leading her toward a more private area among the ornamental shrubs. "Thank you. Your wife also looks very good," Mel said, unable to stop the comment. Sinclair frowned slightly. "Why do you bring up Mayara? I thought tonight was about us." "It's just, I've been watching her, and she doesn't seem like the unhappy, neglected woman you described." Sinclair moved closer to her, taking her face in his hands. "My love, appearances are deceiving. Mayara is very good at keeping up facades, but you and I know the truth. We know what we have is real." He leaned in to kiss her, and Mel let herself be carried away by his comforting words and the passion she always felt when she was in his arms. What neither of them knew was that Mayara had noticed her husband's absence from the ballroom, and following a hunch, had gone out to look for him. From a window on the hotel's second floor, which overlooked the gardens, she could see them clearly. Sinclair with a young, beautiful woman, kissing passionately among the shadows. But instead of feeling the gut-wrenching pain she had expected, Mayara felt a strange, almost liberating calm. She finally had the visual confirmation she needed. There were no more doubts, no more false hopes of reconciliation. Her marriage was over, and she was free to make the decisions she had been putting off for months. She took out her phone and discreetly took several photos of the scene in the garden, not out of vengeance, but out of practicality. She knew the divorce would be complicated, especially with shared assets and social prestige at stake. After a few minutes, she returned to the ballroom with a serene smile on her face. Elaine Baker immediately approached her. "Mayara, dear, the mayor wants to meet you personally. He's heard so much about your work with women-led micro-businesses." "It would be a pleasure," Mayara replied, heading toward where a group of dignitaries was waiting. While conversing with the mayor and other important officials about her business projects and support for social causes, Mayara felt more like herself than she had been in years. Without the emotional burden of pretending her marriage worked, she could concentrate on what truly mattered: her work, her social impact, and her own future. When Sinclair and Mel returned to the ballroom separately, minutes apart, Mayara observed them with academic interest rather than emotional pain. Mel looked slightly nervous, constantly adjusting her hair and checking her makeup. Sinclair, for his part, headed directly toward the group where Mayara was, adopting the role of the attentive, proud husband. "Excuse the interruption," Sinclair said, placing a possessive hand on the small of Mayara's back. "I just wanted to join my wife in this important conversation." Mayara noticed the performance and smiled internally. "Of course, darling. I was just telling the mayor about our international expansion plans." The word "our" made Sinclair look at her curiously, but Mayara continued the conversation professionally. including him in the topics, but making it clear that she was the leader of the projects mentioned. From her position near the bar, Mel watched the interaction between Sinclair and Mayara with increasing discomfort. The professional chemistry between them was evident, and the way other people treated them as a powerful, respected couple contrasted dramatically with the image Sinclair had painted of their marriage. Again, it didn't look like two strangers forced to keep up appearances. The evening continued with speeches about the foundation's work, a charity auction where Mayara made a considerable donation that was applauded by the entire audience, and live music that invited couples to dance. When the music began, Sinclair extended his hand to Mayara. "Shall we dance, my love?" For the first time that night, Mayara hesitated. Dancing with him felt hypocritical, now that she knew for sure about his infidelity. But she also realized this might be the last time they acted as husband and wife in public. "Of course," she replied, taking his hand. On the dance floor, Sinclair held her close, and for a moment, Mayara could remember why she had fallen in love with him years ago. "You look beautiful tonight," he murmured in her ear as they turned slowly. "Thank you," she replied, without the emotional warmth those words usually generated. "Mayara, I feel like we've been distant lately. Maybe we could plan a vacation, just the two of us. Reconnect." She looked into his eyes, seeing for the first time in months an expression that seemed genuine. Could it be that he also realized they had lost something important? Or was this his way of easing his guilt? "We could talk about that," she replied neutrally. From the edge of the dance floor, Mel watched the couple with a heavy heart. The couple dancing in front of her didn't look like two strangers forced to maintain appearances. They looked like two people who shared history, intimacy, and a deep connection that transcended temporary problems. For the first time since her relationship with Sinclair began, Mel wondered if she really knew the man she had fallen in love with. For the Washroom reckoning and the karma bomb, the charity auction had ended successfully, raising more funds than expected for the Foundation's educational programs. Mayara had been one of the night's most generous contributors, and her name was mentioned several times during the official acknowledgments. As the guests mingled during the post-cocktail, she headed toward the ladies' room to touch up her makeup and take a moment to process everything that had happened. She was finishing applying lipstick when Mel entered. The two women met face to face for the first time, reflected in the mirrors of the hotel's luxurious vanity. Mel immediately recognized Mayara, but pretended not to know who she was. However, she couldn't help but study her discreetly. Up close, Sinclair's wife was even more impressive. Her skin was flawless, her features delicate yet strong, and she carried a natural elegance that couldn't be bought or learned. Mayara, for her part, observed the young woman in the red dress with clinical interest. She was beautiful, definitely, with that youthful beauty that middle-aged men found irresistible. But there was something more about her, a vulnerability that Mayara recognized because she had seen it in the mirror during the last few years of her marriage. "Lovely dress," Mayara commented casually, putting her lipstick away in her small handbag. Mel started slightly. "Thank you. Your suit is also very elegant." "Thank you. Is this your first time attending this event?" "Yes, I came as a guest of an associate company." Mel felt uncomfortable with the lie, especially seeing Mayara's intelligent gaze. "How interesting. And what is your line of work?" Mel hesitated for a moment. "I coordinate corporate events." "Ah, that must be very demanding work, especially when complicated relationships with clients are involved." Mayara's tone remained friendly, but something in her words made Mel feel exposed. It was as if this woman could see right through her. "Sometimes it can be complex," Mel admitted, not knowing why she felt compelled to be honest. Mayara moved slightly closer, maintaining eye contact through the mirror. "Allow me to give you some advice, woman to woman. When one gets involved in complex situations, especially those involving married people, it's important to remember that things are rarely what they seem on the surface. Mel's heart began to beat faster. Was it possible that Mayara knew, or was it just a strange coincidence? "I'm not sure I understand what you mean," Mel murmured. Mayara smiled softly, but her blue eyes reflected a sharp intelligence. "I'm just saying that married men tend to tell very particular stories about their marriages when they want to justify certain decisions. But the reality is usually more complex than they admit." Mel felt as if the air in the washroom had become heavier. This woman definitely knew something, but her way of addressing the subject was so subtle that Mel couldn't be completely sure. "Well," Mel said, trying to maintain her composure, "I suppose every marriage has its particularities." "Exactly," Mayara replied, applying a final layer of lipstick. "For example, my husband and I have had our ups and downs, like all couples. But something I've learned after 12 years of marriage is that when a man truly wants to be with another woman, he doesn't look for elaborate excuses to justify it. He simply makes the decision and faces the consequences." The words hit Mel like a slap. The implication was clear. Sinclair had not chosen her over his marriage. He had chosen to have both, maintaining his marital life intact while enjoying an extramarital affair. "I should get back to the event," Mel mumbled, heading toward the door. "Of course," Mayara said kindly. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." When Mel left the washroom, she felt completely disoriented. Her legs trembled slightly as she walked back to the main ballroom. Mayara's words echoed in her mind, putting into perspective things she had chosen to ignore for months. If Sinclair really wanted to divorce Mayara to be with her, why hadn't he taken any concrete steps in that direction? Why did he continue to live with his wife, attend social events as a perfect couple, maintaining all the appearances of a solid marriage? Mel headed to the bar and ordered a double whiskey, needing something strong to calm her nerves. While waiting for her drink, she felt a presence beside her. "Mel?" It was Carly, who had been watching from afar. "You look pale. What happened?" "I think I just talked to Sinclair's wife," Mel murmured, taking the whiskey and downing it in one gulp. "What? Did she recognize you?" "I don't know, but she said things. Carly, I think she knows about us." Carly looked toward where Mayara had returned to the ballroom, conversing animatedly with a group of businessmen. "Mel, that woman doesn't look like someone who just found out her husband is cheating on her. She looks completely composed." "Exactly, and that's what scares me." Meanwhile, Mayara had returned to her social role with renewed energy. The encounter in the washroom had confirmed her suspicions about her husband's mistress. Mel was young, beautiful, but also naive. She had genuinely believed in Sinclair's promises, and now she was beginning to realize she had been used. Mayara felt no anger toward the young woman. Instead, she felt a mixture of pity and understanding. She herself had been naive once, believing in promises that turned out to be empty. Her phone vibrated with a text message from her lawyer. "Documents ready for tomorrow. Proceed?" Mayara quickly typed. "Yes, proceed." "Mayara," Sinclair's voice interrupted her. He had approached with a glass of champagne and a smile that had once made her fall in love. "I've been looking for you. Where were you hiding?" "I just went to the washroom to freshen up a bit. It's been a very revealing night." Sinclair didn't catch the irony in her tone. "It has been a perfect night. You look radiant, and everyone has commented on how impressive you are. I feel very proud to be your husband." Mayara studied him carefully. Did he really believe his own words, or was it just another performance? Was it possible that he felt genuine guilt and was trying to compensate? "Sinclair, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are we happy?" The question took him by surprise. "What do you mean?" "Exactly that. Are we a happy couple? Are you content with our marriage as it is now?" Sinclair hesitated, and in that hesitation, Mayara found all the answer she needed. "Mayara, All marriages go through difficult stages, but the important thing is that we are committed to each other. Committed? She repeated. What exactly does being committed in a marriage mean, Sinclair? He shifted uncomfortably. It means we choose to work on our relationship, that we prioritize our family, that we are faithful to each other. The question hung in the air between them like a sword. Sinclair looked at her with eyes that reflected surprise and something that might have been panic. Of course, he finally replied, but his voice lacked conviction. In that moment, Mayara made a decision. She wasn't going to confront him tonight. She wasn't going to make a scene in public, but she wasn't going to continue pretending she didn't know the truth either. Good, she said simply. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. She walked away to join another conversation, leaving Sinclair confused and worried. From the other side of the ballroom, Mel had been watching the interaction between Sinclair and Mayara. The body language between them seemed tense, but not hostile. They seemed to be having a serious, even intimate conversation. Again, it looked nothing like the image of two strangers trapped in a loveless marriage that Sinclair had painted for her. Carly approached with another glass of wine. Mel, we need to talk. About what? About what you're going to do when you realize that man has been lying to you from the beginning. Mel didn't answer, but in her heart, she knew her friend was right. The seeds of doubt that Mayara had planted in the washroom were beginning to sprout, and with every observation of the night, it became clearer that she had been deceived. The evening continued, but the atmosphere had subtly changed for the three protagonists of this drama. Mayara moved through the ballroom with new freedom, knowing she no longer had to protect a marriage that had ended long ago. Sinclair felt uneasy, sensing that something fundamental had shifted, but unable to pinpoint exactly what. And Mel struggled with the growing realization that the man for whom she had sacrificed so much had perhaps never intended to leave his wife. When the event began to wind down and couples started saying their goodbyes and heading toward the exit, all three knew that the true confrontation was yet to come. The unexpected liberation and the final confrontation. The week following the gala event passed in a strange tension for everyone involved. Mayara had returned to her normal routine, but with a different energy. She no longer wasted time trying to mend conversations with Sinclair or waiting for signs of affection from him. Instead, she focused completely on her work and on finalizing the legal arrangements she had been putting off. Sinclair, for his part, felt uneasy. Something in Mayara's behavior disturbed him, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly what. She wasn't cold or hostile. She just seemed disconnected, as if she had made an important decision of which he was not a part. On Friday afternoon, Mayara arrived home earlier than usual and found Sinclair on the terrace, talking on the phone in a low voice. Seeing her, he quickly cut the call. "You're home early," he commented, approaching to give her a kiss on the cheek that she didn't reject, but didn't return either. "I finished my week's pending tasks. Sinclair, we need to talk." Something in her tone immediately put him on alert. "Of course, what do you want to talk about?" Mayara headed towards the living room and sat on the sofa, gesturing for him to sit across from her. She had a manila envelope in her hands, the same one she had received from the private investigator days ago. "I want to talk about our marriage, about where we really are, not where we pretend to be." Sinclair sat down slowly, his eyes fixed on the envelope she was holding. "Mayara, if there's something bothering you, we can work on it. We've overcome problems before." "Have we overcome this before?" she asked, opening the envelope and taking out several photographs which she placed on the coffee table between them. The images clearly showed Sinclair with Mel on different occasions, leaving a hotel, dining at an intimate restaurant, kissing in the hotel garden during the gala. The photographs were sharp and incontrovertible. Sinclair remained completely motionless, his face draining of all color. For several seconds he said nothing, simply staring at the photos as if he couldn't process what he was seeing. "Mayara, he began, but she raised a hand to stop him. "Don't say you can explain it. Don't say it's not what it looks like. And please don't insult me by saying it was a mistake." Sinclair closed his eyes and ran his hands through his hair. When he looked at her again, there was something different in his expression, a mixture of relief and terror. "How long have you known?" "Officially for a week. Unofficially, I've suspected for months. Why didn't you say anything before?" Mayara leaned back on the sofa, studying him calmly. "Because I needed time to process my own feelings before confronting yours. I needed to know if I wanted to fight for this marriage or if I was ready to let go." Sinclair leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Mayara, what I have with that woman doesn't mean I don't love you. Do you love her?" The direct question caught him off guard. It's complicated." "No, Sinclair, it's not complicated. Either you love her or you don't. Either you love me or you don't. Feelings can be complex, but decisions don't have to be." He remained silent for a long moment, visibly struggling with his emotions. Finally, he spoke in a broken voice. "I love you, Mayara, but I'm no longer in love with you. And yes, I am in love with her." The words hung in the air between them. To Sinclair's surprise, Mayara didn't break down, didn't cry, didn't scream. Instead, she nodded as if confirming something she already knew. "Thank you for being honest, finally. Is that it? You're not going to fight? You're not going to ask me what I did wrong, or what you can do to fix it?" Mayara smiled sadly. "Sinclair, I stopped fighting for us over a year ago. I just hadn't realized it until now." She stood up and walked to the window, watching the city of Miami stretch out before them. "You know what I realized during these days? That I've been acting like an ignored wife for so long that I had forgotten what it feels like to be a complete and confident woman." Sinclair walked up to her. "Mayara, it doesn't have to end like this. We can go to marriage counseling. We can." "No." Her voice was firm, but not hostile. "I'm not going to compete for the attention of my own husband. I'm not going to beg for love that should be given freely. And I'm not going to stay in a marriage where I'm the second option." "You were never the second option." "Yes, Sinclair, I was. For the past few months, every time you chose to be with her instead of working on us, you made me your second option." That night, they slept in separate rooms for the first time in their marriage. The next day, Mayara temporarily moved into the apartment above her offices, a space she had kept for working late, but which now became her refuge. Meanwhile, Mel had spent the week in a state of growing confusion. Mayara's words in the hotel washroom had planted seeds of doubt she couldn't ignore. She had started observing Sinclair's behavior more carefully, and what she saw did not reassure her. He was still living in his marital home, still wearing his wedding ring, still talking about his wife in the present tense when mentioning logistical aspects of his life. There was no real indication that he was taking steps toward divorce. On Saturday morning, Mel made an impulsive decision. She headed toward Mayara's apartment in Brickell. She had researched the address through her company's website. She didn't know exactly what she was going to say, but she knew she needed to have an honest conversation with Sinclair's wife. Mayara opened the door, dressed casually in jeans and a white blouse, her hair loose and makeup free. Even in her most relaxed appearance, she radiated a natural elegance that made Mel suddenly insecure. "Hello?" Mel said nervously. "I'm Mel. I think we need to talk." Mayara observed her for a moment, then nodded and stepped aside to let her in. "Come in. I made coffee." The apartment was beautiful but cozy, tastefully decorated, but without ostentation. It was clearly the space of an independent, successful woman. They sat in the living room, each with a cup of coffee, looking at each other with curiosity and cautious respect. "I suppose you know who I am," Mel began. Yes, and I suppose you know that I know who you are. Mel nodded, feeling strangely relieved that they could talk openly. How long have you known about us? Officially for a week. Unofficially, I've suspected for months. Why didn't you say anything before? Why didn't you confront Sinclair? Mayara took a sip of coffee before answering. Because I needed time to process my own feelings. Finding out your husband is cheating forces you to face truths about your marriage that you may have been avoiding. Mel felt uncomfortable with the mature, thoughtful answer. She had expected to find a hurt, furious woman, not someone so serene and introspective. Mayara, I want you to know that I never intended to hurt you. I know. And I also know that Sinclair probably told you that our marriage was already broken, that we were two strangers living under the same roof. Mel nodded, surprised by the accuracy of the observation. He told you he was going to ask me for a divorce. Yes, he said he was just waiting for the right time. Mayara smiled without humor. Mel, may I ask how old you are? 26. When I was 26, I also believed that married men who said they were going to leave their wives would actually do it. Now, at 35, I understand that men who truly want to end their marriages simply do it. They don't look for elaborate excuses or wait for the perfect moment. The words hit Mel as she had feared they would. So, you think he never intended to leave you? I think Sinclair wanted to have both, the stability and social respect I give him as his wife, and the excitement and passion you give him as his mistress. And for a while he succeeded. Mel felt tears forming in her eyes. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're young, and you were manipulated by a man who told you exactly what you wanted to hear. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. The understanding and gentleness in Mayara's voice made Mel start to cry. I love him. I really do. I know. And he probably loves you too in his own way. But love is not always enough, especially when it's built on lies and half-truths. They remained silent for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. What are you going to do now? Mel finally asked. I'm going to divorce him. I've already hired a lawyer, I've started the process, and I'm going to rebuild my life as the independent woman I used to be. And what should you do? Mayara looked at her with genuine compassion. That decision is yours, Mel. But if you'll allow me one piece of advice, don't settle for being any man's second option. You deserve to be someone's priority, not a secret. Mel nodded, wiping her tears. Can I ask you one more thing? Of course. Do you hate me? Mayara considered the question carefully. No, I don't hate you. Actually, I thank you. You thank me? Yes. Because your relationship with Sinclair forced me to face the truth about my marriage. It forced me to stop clinging to something that was already over a long time ago. In a way, you liberated me. When Mel left that afternoon, both women felt changed by the conversation. Mayara finally felt at peace with her decision to end her marriage, and Mel felt compelled to confront the lies on which she had built her relationship with Sinclair. That night, when Sinclair called her to plan their rendezvous for the week, Mel made the hardest decision of her life. Sinclair, we need to talk, and this time, I need you to tell me the complete truth. The final confrontation was about to begin, and this time there would be no more lies, no more excuses, no more half-truths. The truth, however painful, would finally come to light. 6. Reinvention and the sweetest karma. 6 months later, Mayara signed the final divorce documents in her lawyer's elegant office. The process had been more amicable than she had expected. Sinclair had not fought for the assets. He had accepted the proposed terms, and both had handled the separation with the dignity their years together deserved. Her consulting firm had grown exponentially during these months. Without the emotional distractions of a dysfunctional marriage, she had been able to focus all her energy on expanding her operations to other countries. The expansion she had mentioned at the gala had materialized into real contracts with companies in Mexico and Chile. She left the lawyer's office feeling a freedom she hadn't experienced in years. Her phone rang as she walked to her car. Ms. Mayara, this is Carly. The Spanish investor confirmed the meeting for tomorrow. They are very interested in financing the European expansion. Perfect, Carly. Prepare all the documentation. This could be the step we need to become a truly international company. That night, Mayara dined alone at her favorite restaurant, not out of loneliness, but by choice. She had rediscovered the pleasure of her own company, of making decisions without having to consider the desires or needs of another person. Her phone vibrated with a message from Elaine Baker. Mayara, darling, will you be available to be the keynote speaker at next year's gala? We want to highlight inspiring women entrepreneurs. She smiled as she replied. It would be an honor. In another part of the country, Mel had moved back to Atlanta 3 months ago. After her conversation with Mayara and the final confrontation with Sinclair, she had decided she needed distance from Miami and everything it represented. She had quit her job in corporate events and accepted a position at a digital marketing firm run by young women entrepreneurs. Her relationship with Sinclair had ended in the most predictable way. He had promised to change, swore he would divorce immediately, pleaded for another chance. But Mel had already seen the truth and could not unsee it. It's not about whether you love me or not, she had told him during their last conversation. It's about the fact that you built our relationship on a fundamental lie, and I participated in that lie because I wanted to believe it was true. Now, working on a campaign for a cooperative of artisan women, Mel felt like she was building something authentic for the first time in years. She had started therapy, reconnected with friends she had neglected during her secret relationship, and was slowly rebuilding her self-esteem. And Sinclair? Sinclair had moved into a modern but impersonal apartment after the divorce. His work continued to be successful, but it felt hollow in ways he hadn't anticipated. He had lost 2 extraordinary women in the process of trying to have both, and now he understood the truth of what Mayara had told him. You cannot build happiness on dishonesty. He had tried to contact Mel several times, but she had been clear in her decision to cut all communication. He had considered trying to reconcile with Mayara, but he knew that chapter of their lives was definitively closed. One night, while dining alone, he realized that for the first time in years, he would have to face who he really was, without the reflection of the women in his life. It was a terrifying but necessary prospect. At the gala event the following year, Mayara arrived alone, dressed in an elegant black dress specially designed for her by a talented emerging designer. As the keynote speaker, she spoke about the power of personal and professional reinvention, about the importance of making difficult decisions to live authentically, and about the value of turning personal crises into opportunities for growth. Sometimes, she said into the microphone, looking out at the audience full of elegant couples, the most painful experiences in our lives are the ones that push us toward more authentic versions of ourselves. The key is to have the courage to embrace that transformation instead of resisting it. The applause was long and enthusiastic. After her speech, several women approached to thank her for her words and to share their own stories of reinvention. As her chauffeur drove her home, Mayara reflected on the year that had passed. The pain of the divorce had been real, but so had the personal and professional growth she had experienced. She had learned that sometimes it is necessary to lose the life you thought you wanted to find the life you truly need. Her phone rang with a message from her assistant. Meeting confirmed with the Japanese investors for next week. This could be the start of our operations in Asia. Mayara smiled, put the phone away, and looked toward the future with an excitement she hadn't felt in years. She was finally free to write her own story without having to consider characters who didn't value her leading role. In different parts of the country, 3 people who were once intertwined in a painful triangle were now following separate paths toward more authentic versions of themselves. And although the road had been painful, each had learned valuable lessons about love, honesty, and the value of choosing truth over comfort. This is the definition of karma served cold. Mayara chose self-respect over pretense, and Mel chose truth over a beautiful lie. Who was the real winner here? Let us know in the comments. If you loved this story of an epic takedown and true empowerment, give it a like and subscribe. You won't miss the next saga.